Well, for folks just kind of joining us and popping in, we're talking with Judy Walsh. Our program is called The Lives of the Saints. This is episode 2 with Judy, and Judy is reminding us of how important it is to notice things. And Judy, you bring up you and your in the present chapter that you're in of your spiritual life. Remind me of a time when during Lent, one year I chose for 40 days to stop for half an hour and sit on a bench. I was working at the time and
Wow.
simply just observe. And so I would observe for half an hour, and maybe it would be just a bush. And then I
Mm-hmm.
would have my journal in my hand. And for the second half an hour, I would write about those observations. And I would write
Wow.
about perhaps the scriptural intersections. What does
Sure.
it mean to be rooted? What does it mean to bloom? What does
Mm-hmm.
it mean to absorb the elements around you and to
Mm-hmm.
turn that into something of beauty?
That's
Because
great.
well, I mean, this is just what you're doing. I mean, when you stop and I've seen, could you tell us a little bit about, you were featured recently in a little kind of a blog post or tell us about that.
Well, I'm a big reader, and I had recently read a book called The Art of Noticing, and it had a lot of prompts and ideas for these kinds of activities. And I also subscribed to the author's newsletter. So I had received a newsletter recently, and he did indicate that if you had any ideas or any photos you were interested in submitting, he would gladly take a look at them. So I don't know what motivated me, but I thought, why, I might as well. So I sent him a couple photos of a recent walk that I had taken in the neighborhood, just within the last few weeks. And it was sort of a thematic walk in my
Mhm.
mind. I was looking for signs of hope.
Mm.
And I found all kinds of things that I documented. I had maybe 8 or 10 pictures of different, chalk art that some
Yeah.
neighborhood kids had done, and stuffed animals in the windows. And
Mm.
people are really, doing a lot of creative things right now to
Yeah.
just send that signal of positivity and hope.
Yeah.
So I sent the author a couple of pictures, and lo and behold, he emailed me back, and he said he really liked the whole idea of the walk, and would it be all right if he used one of the photos that I had taken in the next newsletter.
Mhm.
So I thought, oh, this is great. This is kind of like a brush with glory. So sure, you go ahead. And he asked if I wanted my name in there, and I was a little hesitant. So I said, why don't you just put my initials?
Yeah, yeah.
So he did include one of my photos in the recent newsletter, and just a little write up about
Right.
what prompted
Right.
me to
Right.
take the photo.
You
So
know,
that was
no,
fun.
well, yeah, when noticing
Mhm.
as a spiritual practice is kind of what you're describing. Um,
Yes.
and so one thinks of all the ways in which the Bible talks about noticing. It talks about how God knows the very number of hairs on your head,
Right.
or when a bird falls from a bush.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess I'm kind of drawn to noticing because I'm so bad at it. 'Cause, you know, but yeah, I mean, this goes, it kind of edges on the slow food movement, right? And what
Yes,
it is
yes,
to really take time to prepare a meal, to take
right.
time to eat a meal. Um,
Yes.
in a culture where Soylent Green is making money, and where
Right.
were you to come up with the tablet and that would be lunch,
Yeah.
you could just go home and count your money,
Right.
because we're not used to.
No.
I mean, our economy is built on people buying and therefore people producing.
Right.
So noticing then you know tends to be a luxury. I shouldn't put it that way. Noticing isn't a luxury, but we're
Hmm.
programmed to think that it's a luxury,
Sure. Yep.
because we're programmed to think we won't be happy until we get all this stuff, and
Exactly.
that what you need is
Exactly.
what you don't yet have.
Right.
But when you realize that you already have everything you need,
Yes.
um, noticing then becomes. So you take
Yes.
pictures. And do you have an Instagram account?
I don't, but you know what? Several people have told me I need one,
You
so I
gotta
need
get
to.
one.
I need to look into that. Yeah.
You do. It's interesting. I was corresponding with a friend, I have a friend on Instagram, and
Uh-huh.
he's really successful at what he does. He's a priest, and he's shepherding his parish through this time in really heroic ways. But when you go to his Instagram account, it's just pretty pictures. You know,
Really?
it's the brooks, it's the fields.
Yes.
He lives up in
Oh,
Connecticut, and
nice.
and you don't get all the stuff that, you know, when you go on Facebook and it's, here's the award I won, and here's how pretty I look today, and here are the cookies
Right.
I made. It's just his expression of photographs, and you run across a lot of people on Instagram that do it that way. And I would think that when we talk about the spirituality of noticing, that
Mm-hmm.
this would be a great expression for you.
I think I should. I think I should follow up on that.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I don't want to, I mean, we could talk for an hour just on that. But you've
Good.
got so many facets, Judy. One is that you really worked and sunk your life into an incredible career. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I was very, very fortunate. I was one of these people that knew from about maybe first or second grade that I wanted to be a teacher. And I never really varied from it. When I was a child, I used to often play school. And one of my big motivations for becoming a teacher at that time was then I would get to use chalk and write on the chalkboard. So anyway, I never really varied from that. When I was a kid, I had maybe 5 minutes when I had changed my mind a little bit and thought it might be fun to be a librarian instead of a teacher. And so that motivation, though, was only because I thought it would be fun to use the rubber stamps when I would stamp the books with the due dates. But basically, I never changed my mind from the time I was a young girl. And so
most of us hate you.
Yeah.
Who have to go through so many years of angst about
Yeah.
career discernment and anxiety, and you just knew it in second grade.
I just knew right away. And so I kind of programmed everything I did around that.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Western in Kalamazoo for college.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, there weren't a lot of teaching jobs. So I had gotten some advice that maybe I should specialize in an area.
Yeah.
And so I did. So my major was in speech and language pathology. And then I minored in elementary education. So I did get the teaching certificate. But luckily, because I had that specialty, I was able to get a job even before I graduated from college. I had this job lined up, and I worked for about 13 years as a speech and language teacher. And I enjoyed it, but it was never really what I wanted to do. And so many years down the road, it took me a while to work my way into a regular education classroom, which I knew that's what I wanted. But I ended my career teaching second grade for about 10 or 12 years. And when I finally landed that position, then I felt like I was really home. Okay. But I just so enjoyed my career and still kind of miss it. That's why I enjoy some volunteer work in the schools, and it keeps me around classrooms and kids. And it was a wonderful career. I taught for 36 years. And lo and behold, the job that I got, or the district that I worked for when I graduated from college, was the same one that I retired from. I never left that district. Wow. So that's a little unusual these days with people, not going from job to job. But I was very, very fortunate.
Well, they kept you challenged. And what is it about teaching what is it about teaching that really resonates with your soul?
I think it's just the enthusiasm of young children. I just get such a kick out of being around kids. I would much rather talk to a group of kids than a group of adults. I'm just much more comfortable around kids. Their enthusiasm, their optimism, their wonder, their curiosity, it just really fuels my soul. So,
and there's got to be something to, in terms of the dopamine hit you get when you see a kid get a concept.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing like it. It's just, it is. It's like it's like a hit of joy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the insight. Very often we think we can only learn things from people who are smarter than us, quote unquote,
Right.
smarter than
Right.
us.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say that second graders are smarter than us in some
Oh yeah.
important ways. How do you observe that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I always felt, even as the teacher, I was very much oriented to letting the kids drive a lot of the
Hmm.
curriculum.
Hmm.
I did what I had to do, but I was always very open to their ideas and
Yeah.
maybe going in new directions based on their interests. And I think that I learned as much from them as they did from me. And I often said, they learned so much more with one another, from one another, than they could
Right.
from the teachers. So
Right.
as the years progressed and different focuses
Hmm.
became popular in education, it was much more, when I left teaching, it was much more the teacher being what they called the guide on the
Hmm.
side rather than the sage on the stage.
Yeah.
So my job was not to stand up and impart all this
Right.
knowledge, but just to provide opportunities for the kids to sort of create their own learning. And I was there just as a more of a
Hmm.
facilitator or guide.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I liked that role a lot.
And in second grade, just as a reminder, you're seeing them through kind of what stage of their developing. I would
Well,
imagine that in the fall, they're very different than they are in the spring.
yes, yes. And I would, every fall, despite all my years
Hmm.
of being a teacher, I would have to remind myself that they were almost closer to first graders,
Yeah.
late first grade, than they
Hmm.
were to second grade. So you'd always have to kind of ratchet down your expectations
Right.
initially. But most of them had learned to read by then, and they were just kind of hitting their stride, obviously at various stages. But
Hmm.
I liked that age group because they were still real excited about school
Hmm.
and about being there, and their
Yeah.
enthusiasm. And they there wasn't too much back talk or
Right.
sassiness
Right.
at that point
Right.
towards the teacher. But
Yeah.
I found that age group, 7, 8 year olds, I just really clicked with that
Right.
group of
Right.
kids. Although I did, during my career, I did do some teaching in preschool. I had what they used to call PPI, or pre-primary impaired, 3 to 5 year old children that mostly had speech and language delays, but
Yep.
some of them had other issues. And I
Hmm.
enjoyed that as well. I did that maybe 5 or 6 years.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I finally got out of working with special needs kids,
Hmm.
I really wanted to get into regular education. And they moved me from preschool to fifth grade. And that was a
Okay.
big shock.
I can imagine.
I was kind of a fish out of water with
Yeah.
fifth graders.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, one of the first groups of kids that I had at that grade level were not known for their for their good behavior. So I
Right.
was a little challenged that first year when I taught fifth grade. But then I learned to enjoy it. And the older kids bring a lot to the situation as well, a lot more
Hmm.
independence. And
Hmm.
but my specialty and my interest still remained with younger
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Well, and really, you have developed a skill with them that you continue to use now, and I want you to talk a little bit about. But
Mhm.
you really like storytelling.
Oh, I love storytelling. Not so much storytelling, but
Hmm.
reading aloud to
Hmm.
kids.
Hmm.
And since I retired, I was very fortunate to find a group of a lot of retired teachers and librarians. It's an organization called the Birmingham Storytellers Group,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
they're based out of the Birmingham Community House. And we meet once a month and share ideas and books and whatnot. But a number of us are what we call active storytellers, although
Yeah.
most of us are really readers,
Yeah.
where we go out into a number of local schools and read to classrooms, and
Yeah.
mostly working in underserved areas. And I just thoroughly enjoy that. I've got a great relationship with the second grade teacher at Vandenberg, and I enjoy reading. I just really enjoy reading aloud to kids, and I have quite a collection of children's books that I can pull from. So yeah, it's
Well,
fun.
and when you look at our religion as Christians, so much of what Jesus used were stories.
Yes.
Stories that we remember concepts, we remember, we not only remember them, but we understand them better.
Exactly.
Using analogy, using metaphor.
Right. I would often say that, stories for adults, that's how we remember things too. I think of some of these like tour guides or whatever, and that take you around in new cities that you might be visiting. And the tour guides that are the ones that tell the stories, those are the ones that I remember. If they're just giving us a lot of facts, it doesn't resonate. But tell me a good story and I'll remember what you just said.
Right. No, you're right. I'm thinking of a tour guide I had when I visited Israel, visited Egypt years ago, and I can remember the stories. I don't so much remember the names of the people, the places, and the times, but those stories stick with you.
Yes.
And so to change gears a little bit, because you started to talk about it, you mentioned the Vandenberg School. Could you talk a little bit about that ministry that St. David's is a big part of, but that you're a huge part of?
Yes. When I retired, I was sort of looking for some volunteer opportunities, and I think, I don't remember how we actually started our partnership, but Vandenberg is a school that's almost in our backyard from St. David's. And we decided to start this partnership with them and have a number of different activities that we've been involved with the staff and the students there. One of which is a number of us going in and being classroom volunteers. Not everybody focuses in on reading, but teachers have been very responsive to having volunteers come in and work in areas that they might be interested in, or even just being a mentor for a child that just needs a friend and maybe sitting with them during the lunch hour. So we've had that going, since 2010. And another aspect of that partnership has been a pen pal program, where parishioners, we usually have about 25 parishioners that are paired up with fourth grade students from Vandenberg, and they write letters back and forth, and I'm like the mail delivery person, so I make sure that the letters are transferred between the school and the church, and that's been a lot of fun too, a great activity for the kids to continue their writing practice and to develop that sort of intergenerational relationship with someone else. And we've done other things at Vandenberg. We've collected, they collect the box tops for education, and we've sent some recycled magazines and things over there, and just done a number of things with them. And it's been a great partnership, and I certainly hope that we'll be able to continue that in the future.
And I mean, you haven't even talked about the food insecurity that we've been able to address there also through a backpack problem.
That's
project.
true. That's true. We have done a lot of other kinds of helpful activities, whether it be donating clothes for the beginning of the school year for some kids that need some assistance. They have a clothes closet there that St. David's has helped with. And certainly the backpacks with whether it be school supplies at the beginning of the year when or food. The food insecurity there is a real thing, and St. David's has been very privileged to have an opportunity to reach out to them as our neighbors and our friends to help them with a number of different issues that they've indicated.
And I like that word that you've chosen, Judy. And you're always so good about this, and that is that word privilege. Is that
Mm-hmm.
just having a roof over our head, just having bones that work, just having a mind that thinks
Exactly.
straight for any period of time,
Mm-hmm.
really reminds us of how blessed we are. And what I've known about you, and what I'd like you to talk about now is you really are one who tries to, and is, in my estimation, somebody who's plugged into gratitude. And could you talk a little bit about the ways in which you cultivate gratitude in your life, and some of the perhaps influences on your life that have helped you nurture this spirit of gratitude?
Mm-hmm. Um, Gosh, let me think. Um, I think I've had a lot of good models in my
Mm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
Even starting with my parents, they were they were very they were people that were filled with gratitude and were very upfront about sharing that and instilling that in their children. Um, they didn't talk much about it, but
Mm-hmm.
I observed it. They were
Mm-hmm.
models of that, and I observed that in the way they treated others, and just in the way we were raised, and how we operated as a family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Certainly, I mean, my faith certainly
Yeah.
gives me that opportunity to really be reflective and to
Yeah.
focus on
Mm-hmm.
um, all the blessings of this
Mm-hmm.
life.
And even
Um,
your practice of noticing, you
yes,
can't
yeah,
help but notice,
that's a part
gosh,
of it.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, and just a mindfulness. I have done some meditation, and I think that also that practice helps me
Mm-hmm.
focus on things that I normally wouldn't, because again,
Yeah.
it's paying attention,
Right.
and it's that one of my favorite quotes from a poet, Mary Oliver. Her instructions for living a life are pay attention, tell about it, and, or no, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And so I think that's a great way to go through life.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, because when you do pay enough attention, hopefully that astonishment hits you.
Hmm.
Um, and so anyway, I'm sorry if that's a little tangent there. I don't know if you're
Oh
expecting that
no,
question, but
that's
you've
fine.
always come across to me as somebody who's just filled with gratitude and
I
thankfulness for
am.
just one other day. Um,
Hmm.
One of your famous quotes from Anne Lamott is one about the only three prayers we need are thanks, help,
Uh-huh.
and wow. And which
Yes.
which one of those do you identify with?
Well, in some ways, I would have to say all three.
Yeah.
Um, Probably thanks. When I do pray, I usually pray in the evenings. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why. It's just
Mm-hmm.
probably a habit from childhood,
Yeah.
nightly prayers. But
Mm-hmm.
I usually try to start with thanks, and
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of move from there into help.
Mm-hmm.
And the wow piece of it almost hits me not so much when I'm praying in the evening, but just throughout the day. I see
Okay.
something, I'm in conversation, just something hits me. And that's when that wow piece of it
Right.
often appears.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's a great answer. And let's see. I want to get back to some of the practices because you're really, I think, helping us think a little bit more about um, how God works in the everyday. How
Mm-hmm.
there's not this sense that you've had marvelous epiphanies that have been based on anything astonishing that's happened other than noticing the astonishing things around you.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
is there they say that everybody's got a book in them or everybody's got a sermon in them, and I do wonder, to what degree has your life caused you to kind of write things down? You mentioned you're an avid card
Mm-hmm.
reader. Have you written any
Yes.
books or do you journal a lot?
Well, at various times throughout my life, I have done some journaling. I do enjoy writing. I played with the idea and got a rough draft one time of a children's book because I thought that would be fun to do. Since the birth of my granddaughter, I adopted a practice, and it was only because I thought, oh gosh, I'm a grandma, but I don't sew, I don't knit. What am I gonna? I've got to make something for her. So I thought about, what do I enjoy doing? And writing came to mind. So I had the opportunity to have my daughter and my granddaughter live with us for a while. It was not expected, but it's what happened. And so I was really very fortunate because I was able to spend a lot of my granddaughter's early years with her every day. So I could see her change. I could see her grow and develop. And I decided to purchase a really nice, like, leather-bound blank book. And I started a practice of writing a letter to my granddaughter each year on her birthday. And it was just a little highlights of, here's some of the memories and the fun things that we've done this past year. And to this day, I still do it, although they don't live with me anymore. But I still write her a birthday letter, and she enjoys reading it or having me read it to her. So that's a writing practice that I've adopted. I also, my grandmother was a big influence on me. And when I was in college, she did an interesting project. She wrote a book. Now, this was not a book that was published, but she wrote it for all her children. So my mom was one of her kids. And for Christmas one year, my grandmother gave everybody just a small folder with a copy of her book. And basically her book was the story of her life, how she, her childhood, how she met my grandfather, all the way up to, you know, my oldest granddaughter, Judy, is a sophomore at Western. So and she called it Never a Dull Moment. And so a couple summers ago, I thought, you know, I've got a lot of stories. I should write some of my stories down. So I did that and just made it, you know, very similar to hers. Just memories, basically memories of my childhood. And since I grew up on Red Leaf Lane, which is kind of a unusual name for a street, and thought it might have some literary value, I called the book Smile Because It Happened on Red Leaf Lane. And so I made copies for my two brothers, kept one for myself, and then gave one to my daughter as a Christmas gift. But I enjoyed writing it.
And how many pages was it?
Oh gosh, it wasn't very long. I want to say less than 30 pages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just small. And it really didn't look back at my entire life. For some reason, I don't know why, but some of my most vivid memories happened between kindergarten and 5th grade. So I wrote a lot about my time at that point in my life, whether it be family life or trips or school memories or whatever. So that's what I focused in on.
Oh my goodness. And yeah, that's quite an enterprise to undertake, and quite a gift for you to be able to give, you know, your family some of those memories. What about any poetry or fiction? You did mention a children's book.
That's the only writing I've done. I don't know. I don't know if I'll pursue any writing, but I do enjoy writing and reading.
And we haven't even gotten into that. You are quite an avid reader.
I am
a month does not go by when I don't get a book on my desk from Judy Walsh. You need to be reading this. Can you tell me what kind of books are informing you at the moment?
Well, I do like a mix of fiction and nonfiction. I tend to read more nonfiction. I find a lot of the fiction, to me, doesn't go deep enough. But sometimes I just need a light book. One that I've read recently that was nonfiction was a memoir. I do enjoy memoirs. It was a memoir of Sister Helen Prejean, who wrote Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, oh,
But
yeah. But she's still alive, isn't she?
Yes, she's in her 80s.
Yeah.
But this particular book was called River of Fire. And she wrote it, and it's about her childhood, her young adult years, up to her 40s, when she did begin to work with the prison population and working real hard to reform the death penalty. Right. And it doesn't go into any of her work past just the early stages of her book, Dead Man Walking. So it was an interesting read. I didn't know much about her. And so I enjoyed that. And a fiction book that I recently read that I really enjoyed was called Giver of Stars. And it was based on actual happenings. Eleanor Roosevelt had started a what she called a pack horse library back during her time and her husband's time in office. There was a real need for books and teaching people to read, especially populations in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah, rural areas.
It was a story, a fictional story, but based on this actual group that would pack up books and carry them to the people in the mountains via horse or mules. Wow. So it was an interesting story, and I liked it because, some of that actually did happen.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Those are the kind of books I enjoy.
Right, that you're reading now. Now, what could you recommend any books that from a spiritual point of view have helped you? I mean, I hate to say Christian books because there's no book that Christ isn't a part of. There's no story that God isn't, is absent from. But are there some books that you found provoked more divine thinking, pondering the numinous?
I would say I'm a big fan. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I particularly enjoy Krista Tippett on NPR with On Being, and she's written some books that sort of have that feel, the spiritual aspect that she brings, and she often uses that as a springboard for people that she interviews and finding out where each person's spiritual journey has brought them and what it was like in their early years. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything in particular right now that would fit that category, but
right. Well, again, I don't know if it's a valid category because there are, I can look at a bunch of books on my shelf and some are written by Christian authors with the presumed notion that I will be imparted some sort of spiritual awareness by reading it. And those may fall flat where there are others that had actually no intention at all of provoking that kind of thought or feeling in me, but your spirit is awakened.
That's true. That's true.
So I guess it's not so much Christian books, but books that really cause you to say thanks, wow, or help.
Yes. Yes. I think Anne Lamott's book, I think her one book, that might have been the title, but she's an author that I enjoy. And I find myself drawn to psychology, people like Brene Brown, talking about, different aspects of being human, courage, vulnerability.
Right. And you're a big fan of Priya Parker.
Oh my gosh.
And she writes a lot about gatherings, which is, of course, now very important.
She's got a fabulous new podcast that I think she's only done 3 or 4 episodes so far. And she was planning to do a podcast anyway. But now, in light of the pandemic, she has really turned her focus to how can we maintain gatherings, but in this new virtual way.
Right.
And people are writing to her with different questions. You know, I was going to have a graduation party. Now I can't have it. Is there a way I can still have it, only in this new method? She talks about birthday parties, graduations, baby showers, board meetings. She's looking for ideas. So she's just filled with all kinds of creative ways that we can still gather, but in this virtual way now. And I find it fascinating.
Well, and the wonderful thing about gathering, and certainly your being drawn to gathering, is that the primary way we love God is through loving others, and you can't love others unless you're with others, and you don't necessarily have to be an extrovert, and I would guess that you're probably 50-50. You have an extroverted side. You're never one to not have anything to say, but you're also extremely introverted too.
Yes, I think I'm more introvert than extrovert. I enjoy the social aspects, but I'm very comfortable with myself and who I am, and my default is more introvert than extrovert, I think.
Yeah. But we were. This is a big reason I think there's so much stress these days, is because we're not created to be like this.
Right.
We're failing our basic, our basic, call and desire deep in our souls is to be with one another.
Right.
And for no other reason. As Christians, this is how you serve God: is you serve other people, and you be good to them, and you try to improve their lives, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to ask you one of your famous questions is. Can you remember some advice from your parents that was particularly helpful in your life?
I would say not specific words that they used, but again, more in their actions. I think both my mom and dad were very, very open people and very non-judgmental. They just never, if someone did something or family circumstances changed or people did things, they never judged people. They were just, I think that's the biggest thing about both of them. Just that non-judgmental, okay, this has happened. This is the way they are. How can we help? Let's move on. And that's the thing that jumps to my mind.
Well, and speaking of advice, is there advice that you would give the younger Judy?
Oh gosh. I think I would tell her not to worry so much about what other people think. I was pretty caught up in that when I was younger. I think all of us probably were. And it just seems that the older you get, the wiser you get, and the more it's too bad that it takes us this long to learn so many of these life lessons. But I would say, just lighten up, relax, and be yourself and be confident in who you are, and don't try to fit anybody else's formula and try to be, who you think.
The problem with youth is it's wasted on the young, right?
It is. It really is.
And just as I guess as we wind up here, just a couple of just fun questions. Name your 3 favorite foods?
Oh gosh, definitely anything chocolate. I would say I love like a good burger from Red Coat.
The Red Coat Tavern on Woodward. Well, actually, they have
burgers.
Yeah, they have more than one with the zip sauce. And
yes, I could go for one of those about now. And gosh, I'm trying to think what else. I do like ice cream.
Well, what's your favorite? What are your favorite flavors?
Again, chocolate or something with caramel.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Nothing fattening on my list. Chocolate, burgers, and ice cream. How's that for?
That's all American.
Yeah.
One thing we have not touched on, and I don't think time's going to permit us to do that, is you really love to travel.
I do. I do.
And you've been to many, many different places, from the Iditarod
Yes. Yeah.
to Iceland.
Yes.
And so I won't ask you about the past. I just ask you, what's next on your bucket list when things open up? Where would you like to go, you and your wonderful husband?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we did have some plans that we had to cancel, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity. But we did have a river cruise planned, and we were going to go to France, and I've never been there. So we were looking forward to that. There's lots of places that, even in the United States, there's an awful lot of places that I haven't been. I should probably just get in a car and start driving west. I mean, I've been to California, I've been to Oregon and Washington, but I really haven't seen too much between here and there. So that would be a good trip for me to take at some point. But yeah, I've been fortunate to visit Alaska, and I do like these colder climates. Hawaii doesn't thrill me. I'd much rather go somewhere. I like cold and kind of a dark gray, New Englandy kind of. I went to Nova Scotia once, and Halifax, and
I'm sure there's something Freudian here.
yeah, I don't know what it all means, but those are places that draw me in. But certainly there's so many places in Europe that I'd love to go. I've been to Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, which were all fabulous, but I'd love to go to France. I'd love to go to Italy. So hopefully someday.
Yeah. Well, final question, and that is, as soon as this emergency, these rules are lifted, fill in the blank, I'm going to make a beeline to
probably Starbucks and out for dinner, because I really haven't done anything with even takeout food. We haven't done anything with, but yeah, I love my fancier coffees, and so I'll probably do that, and grab my granddaughter and do that with her as well. And she'll go for a cookie, and I'll go for coffee.
Well, Judy, we'll certainly have to keep up our Wednesdays at Bigby's when this happens as well.
I look forward to that.
So, Judy, thank you so much for taking an hour to be with your parish family and let them know all about Judy Walsh, the things we wanted to know and the things that we didn't know. And thank you so much. It is a real delight to be walking the journey with you, somebody as hopeful and as positive and as inquisitive as you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.